Now joining me, Paula Jean Swearingen. She's running for U.S. Senate against Joe Manchin in Democratic primaries. Paula Jean, great to have you back on the program.
Hey, Jake, how you doing?
Great. Well, West Virginia is in the news a lot lately. Plenty of strikes going on down there. So curious as to what your, I guess, position on those strikes are. But even more curious, because I have a sense, given how progressive you are, where you're going to wind up. But what Joe Manchin's position on those strikes have been.
Well, you've seen with our public employees and educators, they did get a 5% raise. Our correctional officers and state troopers, they got a little bit different. Changes in PEIA are frozen. They're being dealt with a task force right now. There were 23 people on that panel. Bob Beach, let's shout out to him. He fussed and 6 more people were added, and those were women because everybody on the task force were men, except for one. So now there's 6 women added and 1 Raleigh County school teacher. And what you're looking at with Frontier Communications is with the infrastructure. There was federal dollars and state dollars coming here to create an infrastructure through Frontier Communications. So federal and state dollars came in for that. And actually in 2010, when Joe Manchin was governor, he kind of led that effort. Frontier has not been putting that money into the infrastructure like they promised, and they're not hiring local. From what I'm hearing from the state workers and being out in the streets with them and talking to them, is that they're hiring out-of-state workers, and that money is also being invested in other states. So the money that was supposed to come in here and create the infrastructure has not. And since Joe Manchin's been senator, he's pretty much give up on that effort, and he's not holding Frontier to their promise. They were over invoicing customers, and they were supposed to pay back $4.7 million, and he's not held them to that either. The funny thing about Joe Manchin is I called him out on social media. Actually called out all of our federal candidates that are running in the Senate race, because outside of Patrick Morrissey, he threatened to get our educators and public employees arrested. I was the only federal senatorial candidate standing up with our state workers. I've been out with them day one. My team has been in communication with educators and public employees and our legislators every day. When I called Joe Manchin out, he showed up at the Capitol for a photo op. When he finally did get involved, he sent in Jim Justice's senior lobbyist, Larry Piccio. He's a coal lobbyist. He used to be over the West Virginia Federation of the West Virginia Democratic Party. He used to be Joe Manchin's chief of staff, and now he's his senior advisor. I read in the paper the other day another coal lobbyist, Chris Hamilton, head of the Coal Association, was allegedly caught entering the building with Larry Puccio's key card, and Larry Puccio is believed to be the only lobbyist with a key card to the Capitol. So not only did Joe Manchin recruit Jim Justice and campaign for him, his solution for our public employees was to send in him and Jim Justice's lobbyist into the Capitol. He's really not done anything. When he showed up at the Capitol for a photo op, he didn't get a real warm welcoming. Some of our educators was happy that he was there, but he showed up saying that we should hold a special session. It should go on the taxpayers' backs. And then he went on to say that he didn't know what was going on, that he'd not been here. Now, as a federal candidate, I have big problems with what's happened there, because this affects 240,000 West Virginians. People were standing out in the streets begging for a livable wage, and they were begging for health care. And again, our senator was not there except for to show up for a photo op. And he's done the same things with the CWA workers. I've been out every single day. If it wasn't in the Capitol, it was out in the streets. And like I said, my team's been working with these people because it's important. It's important for this state. We need not only a good educational system, we need a good workforce, but our teachers are even having to buy pencils. And if we don't have a good infrastructure here, we're not going to have any, we can't invite business here, and good educators and good schools and good roads.
So I heard Joe Manchin went down there and said, quote, "I haven't been here, I don't know the details." I'm not sure that I would have admitted that if I went down there. This doesn't speak well of how much he cares about the issue. So, but I want to go back to Frontier for a second because I think that that's interesting and instructive. So, are there workers currently on strike?
Yes, and like I said, 200 people have been laid off. Instead of hiring locally, they actually have contractors. They've hired contractors, and they've actually put the money out of state, and they've invested their business in out of state. Instead of the money that was supposed to get the federal dollars and state dollars that was supposed to go into this state, they haven't. And these guys are complaining. They're saying they're out there. They're putting Band-Aids on these lines. They want good customer service. They want their company to grow. And yeah. Frontier does not provide good services. I have Frontier at home. I have problems myself, and it's not the employee's fault.
Is Frontier a donor for Joe Manchin?
I'm not sure, Jink, if he's a donor or not, but okay. I know he led the effort. That's a big part of his campaign promise is to expand the broadband in this state, and he let Frontier over-invoice their customers. They owe $4.7 million, and he's not made them pay their bill.
And so, because the philosophy was that guys like Joe Manchin support companies like Frontier, but it's because it's going to trickle down to the workers. So, or to the customers. But if it's not trickling down on the workers, and that's what then they're on strike, and the customers are getting ripped off, then what was the point of supporting Frontier in the first place? I feel like a lot of times they say that and it just gets lost in the shuffle and nobody ever calls them out. So why are you supporting the company if they're not helping the customers or the workers?
The Republican leadership does not support these guys right now either. They're not getting paid and they're not eligible for unemployment benefits either because there was a bill that went through, Mitch McConnell led it, that they could not get unemployment benefits while they were on strike.
Okay, now we're running short on time, so I wanted to ask you about one more issue. Sure. Medical cannabis in West Virginia. What was the law and what just happened?
We had a medical cannabis bill last year, and pretty much what happened is it's pretty much dead. Tim Armstead the other day let the clock run out. They were making some amendments to the bill and putting some new legislation in. He let the clock run out, and it didn't happen. It didn't get to the House. The clerk said that they delivered it. He said it didn't get delivered on time, and pretty much we had medical cannabis, and now it's gone. So,
Paula Jean, you could buy. I'm not clear about this, so I just want to be clear. Could you buy medical cannabis legally last year in West Virginia?
We had implemented a bill last year, yes. We had led that, and they allowed the clock to run out. They were taking it over. The session was over. They were taking it over to the House. Tim Armstead said that they didn't get it there in time. Some people in the cannabis community, the advocates for medical cannabis, they're trying to get Jim Justice to call them back to session and make a decision, but pretty much they just underhandedly did not get the bill to the House, is what happened.
So it's not legal anymore?
No, well, from what I understand is the funding that was there is not going to be there anymore. Rusty Williams, he's been lobbying. He's been a leader for cannabis here and getting it, under law in West Virginia. I would really like for you to sometime to talk to him about it too, because he's led those efforts. We have a lot of people that have been working on that. I would really like for you to bring Rusty on and hear exactly what happened. It was a disgrace that they said they didn't deliver the bill, so we lost everything that we have.
So Paula Jean, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't believe that cannabis is the major drug problem in West Virginia. Isn't it opioids? And yet
we have a large addiction epidemic here, one of the largest in the country, yes.
And in fact, cannabis could help because that's a way of weaning people off of opioids instead of using opioids for painkillers. So what in the world's going on there? Is it the story, that we, as usual, where the politicians on both sides are doing well, but the state's getting screwed again?
Well, it could help with initial pain management too, so doctors could be prescribing. I mean, it's medicine. We know it's medicine, and it's not a matter of time. It's a matter of time. Cannabis is going to be legalized on a federal level. And if we do not do something with this state, you look at what happened just now with the public employees. If we had fully legalized cannabis, then we could have taken care of our public employees. They said it was a budget issue, but they don't want to tax the coal industry appropriately. They don't want to tax the gas industry appropriately. We're always having a budget crisis, but we don't have visionaries for our future. The Democrats stood behind even with the problems with the Democratic Party here, I have to give a shout out to the Democrats in the Senate and House that stood behind our public employees. But we could have legalized cannabis and we could have paid our bills. We could put renewables, like I said, on mountaintop removal sites. We could manufacture renewables in West Virginia. We could have hydropower, geothermal. We could have implemented a single player plan on a state level the past couple of weeks, and we didn't see it happen. And the one thing that could create a good infrastructure, they took that away from us too. I mean, within 6 to 8 months, if we legalized cannabis, we would see economic growth within 6 to 8 months. It's ridiculous what's happened here. And this state has stood up on a national level. You've seen we've led a national movement, and it was led by our public employees and educators, because we have seen it's not a partisan divide. People want good jobs. They want good roads. They want clean water. Some of these areas in this state still don't have adequate sewage systems. We want growth, and we want clean and safe jobs, and we want health care, and people want a living wage. And they shouldn't have to fill our capital city to do it. And that's what's happened. And like the guys with Frontier right now, they're not only standing up for their jobs, they say that they're making a living wage, but their jobs now are being outsourced and the money's going to other companies. When is it going to be West Virginia's turn? And I am a federal candidate. If I was in office right now, I would be pushing for Medicare for all. I would be pushing for federal dollars to come into West Virginia, but it's going to take all of us to stand up. And I want to bring up too, Jink, is a bill that went through that I'm pretty upset about, and it's SJR 12, and it's putting abortion on the November ballot in the form of a constitutional amendment. And the Democratic Party and the leadership, since this has went through, and we had Democrats and Republicans vote for this bill. With this putting on the ballot, we could see a blue wave in West Virginia, and the shit show that's happened. The Democratic Party didn't even talk about this amendment. We're supposed to be pro-women's rights, and now this amendment's is a distraction on the ballot, and we're going to be divided with issues. This is not a partisan issue. Women should have a right to access in health care. It's like I said, it's not a partisan issue. It goes back to education rights. If women had access to, birth control, if they had access to educational opportunities, we could find solutions and reduce the rates of abortion. But what they're doing now is putting these dividing issues on the ballot so we can be divided here and not bring real growth to this state.
All right. Paula Jean Swearengin, run for United States Senate against Joe Manchin. Let me give the links to everybody. Volunteers are super important, so are donations, especially because Paula Jean's a Just Democrat. That means she does not take corporate PAC money. So find out more about her at paulajean2018.com. Paula Jean Swearengin, thank you so much for joining us on the TYT Network.
Thank you for having me.